10 minutes later, the car rolled to a stop in front of a vast mansion surrounded by high stone walls and glimmering garden lights. Hyunwoo stepped out cautiously, his eyes scanning the quiet compound. The air was cold and, for some reason, heavy. The man in black motioned for him to follow, and together they entered the house. The sound of their footsteps echoed against the marble floor as they made their way through a long hallway until they stopped in front of a grand wooden door. The man knocked once, then opened it. "He's here," he announced before stepping aside. Hyunwoo entered, his eyes immediately catching sight of a woman seated behind a desk, elegant, poised, her features strangely familiar. For a moment he froze. His breath caught in his throat. "Impossible," he muttered, his heart pounding in disbelief. The woman, Mrs. Park, rose gracefully from her chair and walked toward him, her expression soft yet filled with emotion. "No," she said quietly. "It's not impossible, Hyunwoo. I am your real mother." Hyunwoo shook his head violently. No, that can't be true. My mother is." "That woman is not your mother," she interrupted gently but firmly. "Please sit. Let me tell you everything." Reluctantly, Hyunwoo sat down, his eyes never leaving her face. Mrs. Park took a slow breath before speaking, her voice carrying both pain and strength. "When I came to South Korea many years ago, I met a woman named Han Minji. She was selling snacks on the street late one night. There was something about her, the way she spoke, the fire in her eyes, that drew me in. I took a liking to her and decided to help her. I paid for her university education and even arranged a job for her in my company after she graduated." She paused for a moment, her gaze distant as if reliving the past. "But what I didn't know," she said bitterly, "was that Minji had begun to envy me. She wanted everything I had, my status, my husband, my life. She hid her jealousy well, but all that time, she was studying me. How I dressed, how I laughed, how I spoke, everything." Hyunwoo's hands clenched tightly in his lap. "And then?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Park's expression hardened. "Then, when you were 5 years old, I was coming home from a business trip when I got into a car accident. I was barely conscious when I saw her. She stood over me with that same smile I once thought was kind. And she said, 'Rest in peace. I'll take care of everything.' Then she turned and ordered her men to get rid of me." Hyunwoo's eyes widened, horror creeping up his spine. "But my men found me before hers could finish the job," she continued. "They saved me. She thought I was dead, so she killed everyone who knew the truth before she changed her face to look exactly like mine. When I finally recovered, I heard he had adopted a young girl named Natalia. That's when I realized he had discovered she was a fake. Adopting Natalia was his way of testing her, trying to provoke her into revealing her true nature. But instead, she grew cautious. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Hyunwoo felt his chest tighten, grief, anger, and confusion mixing together. "From today onward, you will stay here," she said softly. "Until this is over. She will try to hurt you again, Hyunwoo. I can't let that happen." Hyunwoo hesitated, torn between disbelief and the strange familiarity in her voice. Then she opened a small velvet box on her desk and handed him a locket. "Look," she said with a tender smile. Inside was a photograph, a much younger Mrs. Park, holding a 2-year-old Hyunwoo in her arms. Both were smiling, sunlight shining behind them. "Your father took this," she whispered. Hyunwoo's throat tightened. The warmth of the photo, the way she looked at him, it all felt too real. Slowly, he lifted his gaze to her. "It's really you," he murmured. She smiled softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Yes, my son. Can I hug you?" she asked quietly. Hyunwoo nodded. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in years, Hyunwoo felt something he hadn't known he'd been missing. Comfort, safety, the genuine warmth of a mother's embrace. It calmed him completely, melting the walls of doubt around his heart. Han Minji had never hugged him before, never once shown him tenderness. When they pulled apart, Hyunwoo wiped his eyes. "What about Natalia?" he asked softly. Mrs. Park smiled warmly. "She's my daughter, too. Though I've never met her, I've already accepted her as family. You should do the same, Hyunwoo." Hyunwoo nodded slowly, a new sense of resolve settling in his heart. For the first time, he truly believed this was his real mother. And now, he knew he had to stand by her side, no matter what came next. That same night, Lee and Natalia finally arrived at his mansion. The night was quiet, the soft hum of the fountain outside echoing faintly through the open windows. As they stepped into the living room, Lee turned to Natalia, his gaze lingering on her face before he suddenly leaned in, capturing her lips in a deep, lingering kiss. When he pulled back, he smiled softly and wrapped his arms around her. "After we end this case on Mrs. Park," he said quietly, his voice full of promise, "I'll marry you." Natalia blinked, a small smile forming on her lips as her heart swelled at his words. She nodded, her cheeks glowing faintly. "You better not be joking," she teased gently. "I'm not," he replied with a low chuckle, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "You've already stolen too much of me to let you go now." Natalia smiled again, and he kissed her forehead tenderly before letting go. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow, we start digging into Mrs. Park's secrets." "All right," Natalia said softly. She gave him one last look before walking upstairs toward her room. As her footsteps faded, one of Lee's men entered the living room. The man bowed slightly. "Boss, there's been no movement from Mrs. Park yet." "Nothing at all? Other than the failed attempt on Hyunwoo and his girlfriend." The man replied, "She's been quiet." Lee nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "She's planning something," he murmured, almost to himself. "Keep an eye on her every move. I don't want any surprises." "Yes, sir," the man said before leaving. Lee exhaled deeply and glanced up the staircase where Natalia had disappeared moments ago. Then he turned toward his study, his mind already plotting their next move. The following morning in America, inside the sleek glass building of the International Task Force, Samwoo and Vanessa stood before a large digital board displaying data on the resurgence of the Ghost Syndicate. Around them, their team analyzed surveillance feeds, coded transmissions, and scattered reports coming in from various countries. As the meeting continued, an assistant stepped in and announced that the director wanted to see them immediately. Samwoo and Vanessa exchanged quick glances before heading to the director's office. Their new boss, a tall man with sharp features and calm authority, gestured for them to sit. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "The Ghost Syndicate has sent a group into South Korea. Their objective is to assist a woman named Mrs. Park in executing her plans. Your mission is to take them out." Vanessa's eyes brightened with interest. She turned to Samgwoo with a grin. "Hubby, looks like we're heading to Korea. Finally, the vacation we've been waiting for. Just me and you." Her teasing softened the room. Samgwoo and even the director allowed faint smiles. Samgwoo leaned forward. "When do we move out, sir?" "In a month," the director replied firmly. "I want full preparation before deployment. You'll be going with 5 of your teammates." Samgwoo gave a curt nod. "Understood." Vanessa rose, straightening her jacket. "Then I guess it's time to pack." As they left the office, she looped her arm through Samgwoo's with a playful grin. "A mission and a vacation, what could be better?" Samgwoo glanced at her and chuckled. "You really think eliminating the Ghost Syndicate counts as a vacation?" "Only if I'm with you," she said, her smile unwavering. He shook his head but couldn't hide the small smile tugging at his lips as they walked down the corridor, ready to begin their next dangerous journey. That same morning, at Han Minji's luxurious mansion, the atmosphere was tense. She sat in her grand living room, a cup of untouched tea resting on the glass table before her. Her sharp eyes were fixed on her assistant, who stood nervously by the door, clutching a tablet. "Have you found the mole?" Han Minji asked coldly, her voice slicing through the silence. The assistant hesitated, lowering his gaze. "No, ma'am. Not yet." Her expression darkened instantly. "Useless," she snapped, rising from her seat. "Do I have to do everything myself?" She paced slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "How hard is it to find one traitor among you?" The assistant swallowed hard, not daring to respond. Han Minji stopped abruptly, turning to him sharply. "What about Hyunwoo?" The assistant answered quickly. "We lost track of him, ma'am. He was last seen talking to an unidentified man outside the club, but after that, he disappeared." Han Minji's lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. "So," she murmured, "the person trying to expose the truth is protecting him. Then we can't waste time." She pivoted back to the assistant, her tone decisive. "Call the leader of the syndicate. Tell them to move up their arrival. Instead of 1 month, I want them here within the next week. We cannot wait any longer." "Yes, ma'am," the assistant replied quickly. "And one more thing," she added, her voice dangerously calm. "Have Natalia, Lee, Jihoon, and DeLuca's daughter followed." The assistant bowed. "Understood." "Good," she said coolly, sinking back into her seat. She exhaled slowly, letting fury and calculation twist quietly in her mind. The following morning, Lee and Natalia spent the morning rifling through archives, files, and online records. By noon, frustration had settled over them like dust. Every lead circled back to the same carefully constructed history. She has erased every trace of the past that connects to her, Natalia said, leaning back in her chair with a long sigh. Lee rubbed his temples, grim. That's exactly what she did. At Mrs. Park's breakfast room, she sat with Hyunwoo over a quiet meal when one of her men entered and bowed. Madam, he reported. Lee and Natalia couldn't find anything on Han Minji. Mrs. Park set down her teacup and considered the news. Then send them a yellow envelope, she instructed. Include Han Minji's old face and the new one she wears now. The man nodded and left at once. Hyunwoo looked up, concern etched across his face. I want to help, he said. No, Mrs. Park answered, calm and resolute. If Han Minji discovers her past has been exposed, she'll use you to draw me out of the shadows. Until this is over, you stay away. She paused, a faint smile touching her lips. Oh, and your girlfriend will be here soon. I don't want anything to happen to her. Hyunwoo hesitated, then bowed his head and nodded. Mrs. Park lifted her cup and drank slowly, eyes distant and sharp. This time, there would be no escape for Han Minji. Back in America, at the International Task Force headquarters, the atmosphere was tense with urgency. Samgu and Vanessa stood before their superior, waiting. Change of plans, he said, his tone sharp and deliberate. You and your 5 teammates will be leaving for South Korea next week. Our intel confirms that the Ghost Syndicate's men are moving faster than we expected. Vanessa's eyes lit up instantly, a bright smile spreading across her face. Finally, she said, glancing at her husband with excitement. Looks like we're moving earlier than planned. Samgu gave a firm nod, already slipping into mission mode, his mind calculating every detail. As they exited the office, Vanessa's energy contrasted sharply with the tension lingering in the corridors. She felt a thrill of anticipation, not just for the mission, but for returning to Seoul with Samgu, side by side. That night in Lee's living room the air was taut and still. The only sound came from the rustle of paper as one of Lee's men set a sealed yellow envelope on the table. Natalia glanced at him, curiosity lighting her face. Where did you get this? Lee asked, voice low and controlled. The man shifted uneasily. It was in one of our men's cars, sir. I don't know who put it there, but I thought you should see it. Lee exchanged a quick look with Natalia before carefully opening the envelope. Inside were several photographs. One the face everyone knew as Mrs. Park, the other a completely different woman. The resemblance was unmistakable. This second image was the woman Mrs. Park must have been before the surgery. Natalia leaned forward, eyes widening as she studied the pictures. So this is her, the real face behind everything. Lee reached for his phone and dialed Jihoon. When Jihoon answered, Lee's voice was calm but urgent. We've got the fake Park Nari's true face. You and Marie need to come here now. We'll decide our next move together. He ended the call and looked up at Natalia, resolve hardening in his expression. 10 minutes later, Jihoon and Marie arrived at Lee's mansion, their expressions tense as they were led into the living room. Lee placed the photos on the table, and all 4 of them leaned in as Natalia spread the photographs across the surface. The images revealed the face of the Mrs. Park they had always known and, beside it, her original face. The difference was striking, yet unmistakably the same woman. Jihoon studied the photos carefully, brows furrowed. Now that we know her true face, we can finally dig into her past, he said, voice steady but laced with resolve. We need to find out who she used to be before all of this. Lee nodded, then called in one of his men. He handed him a copy of the photo showing Han Minji's original face. 2 people from Team 2 should search for anyone who truly knew this woman, Lee instructed firmly. Marie glanced at Lee. What about information on her history? Anything we can get? Natalia shook her head. There isn't much. She's erased everything that could reveal her. And she may have eliminated people who knew her and couldn't hide from her. Lee pressed his lips into a thin line. Exactly. She's methodical and ruthless. We have to expect the worst. Marie nodded silently, understanding the gravity of the situation. Jihoon turned to Natalia, his tone serious. 3 days from now, you'll come with me to the shareholders' meeting at Mrs. Park's company. But we have to prepare for any surprises. She won't go quietly. Natalia met his gaze, determination in her eyes. I understand. I'll be ready. A few minutes later, Jihoon and Marie departed, leaving Lee and Natalia alone. The weight of the task ahead pressed on them, but finally, with a clear target and a plan forming, they felt the first glimmer of control in the long shadow cast by Han Minji. The following day, two of Lee's men set out at dawn, the crisp morning air carrying a sense of urgency as they began their search. They moved systematically through neighborhoods, old districts, and business areas, quietly asking questions, showing discreet photographs, and noting every reaction. Each lead they pursued felt like a delicate thread. Some led to dead ends, others to faint memories of a woman who had always been mysterious, even in her earlier years. Others were wary, hesitating to speak, as if recalling her brought back unpleasant or dangerous memories. By late afternoon, the two men arrived at a modest house tucked in the old neighborhood, the kind of place that carried decades of memories in its worn bricks and faded paint. Inside, they found an older woman whose loyalty to Mrs. Park Nari had never wavered. She looked up as the men entered, her eyes wary but curious. "Madam," one of the men began, carefully showing her a photograph. "Do you recognize this woman?" Madam Mina's eyes widened slightly as she studied the image. She let out a quiet, controlled sigh. That is Han Minji," she said slowly. "I knew her a long time ago." The other man leaned forward. "Can you tell us about her?" "Anything, about her past, what she did." She nodded, her expression hardening. She was ambitious, cunning, but no one could have imagined her depths. Mrs. Park Nari helped her when she had nothing, gave her a chance, paid for her education, even guided her early career. She treated her almost like a sister. The first man's eyes narrowed. But then, what happened later? Her voice became colder. She betrayed Mrs. Park. After that business trip, she orchestrated a road accident to kill her. Mrs. Park had trusted her completely, and Minji, she used that trust to end her life. The second man's tone was incredulous. "She actually did that? After everything?" Her hands clenched slightly. "Yes." And she was careful, calculated. Only someone who had learned every move, every habit of Mrs. Park could do something so precise. No one suspected her, and yet she was behind it all. The men exchanged a grim look. "Thank you, madam. You've given us the clarity we needed." She nodded, her eyes filled with both sorrow and warning. With that, the men left, heading back to Lee, the weight of the truth pressing on them with every step. By nightfall, Lee's two men returned to the mansion with news that tightened the room like a drawn wire. The living room held them all, Lee, Natalia, Jihoon, and Marie, clustered around the low table, faces lit by soft lamplight. One of the men relayed what Madame Mina had told them. They sat in a heavy silence as the implications settled. Jihoon was first to break it, pragmatic and controlled. "We take the company from her," he said. "Natalia holds the largest block of shares. She can assume control, force Minji out, and then, when things are stable, transfer leadership to Hyunwoo." Marie folded her hands, eyes hard. "This will corner her," she said. "Minji doesn't retreat quietly," Jihoon added. "Expect violence, lies, everything she used to survive." They all nodded. Natalia's fingers found the edge of the photograph of the woman before the surgery. She looked up, steady. "Then let's get this done," she said simply. 2 days later, the Park Company's boardroom was thick with tension, each breath feeling heavier than the last. Shareholders filled the room, eyes shifting between Natalia and Jihoon as they waited for the meeting to begin. When the doors opened, all heads turned. Fake Mrs. Park entered, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, Choi close behind. She scanned the room, and when her gaze landed on Jihoon and Natalia, a smirk spread across her face. Without a word, she took her seat, exuding the calm arrogance of someone used to control. The speaker's voice broke the silence, formal and precise. "Today, the shareholder with the highest percentage will gain the authority to control the company and exercise full rights in its management." He began detailing the shares each shareholder held, his tone neutral, betraying no favoritism. Natalia's heart beat steadily, though tension lingered in her shoulders. As he finished, the final tally was clear. Natalia held 60%, the highest stake in the company. A murmur ran through the room as other shareholders shifted uneasily in their seats. Breaking the silence, Natalia stood, her voice calm yet commanding. "From this moment on, Mrs. Park is no longer the CEO, nor will she hold any position in this company." Shock rippled through the boardroom. Shareholders glanced at one another, hesitant to believe what they were hearing. Fake Mrs. Park's smirk faltered slightly. Her voice, laced with defiance, cut through the air. "Natalia, you cannot simply remove me without evidence. Are you prepared to prove these claims?" Natalia's lips curved into a confident smile. "Evidence is ready," she said. "Mr. Ontamin, please show everyone the video." Mr. On stepped forward and connected the files to the screen. The first clip played, showing Mrs. Park threatening several shareholders, pressuring them to hand over their shares. The room fell silent as each subsequent video revealed more of her manipulation, intimidation, coercion, and blatant abuse of power. Shareholders leaned forward, disbelief and anger flashing across their faces. When the last video ended, Natalia turned to Mrs. Park, her voice steady and unwavering. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" The room held its breath. Mrs. Park's only response was a cold smirk. She rose slowly, her confidence now tinged with defeat, and with Choi silently following, she walked toward the door. As the doors closed behind her, a ripple of relief and satisfaction passed through the room. Natalia exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly, while Jihoon gave her a subtle nod of approval. The battle for the company had been won, but the war against Han Minji was far from over. Mrs. Park sat rigid in the back seat, anger coiling behind her composed mask. Beside her, Mr. Choi watched her face for any sign. When she turned, she spoke, each word a quiet blade. "Call Jihoon." Jihoon and Natalia had only just stepped out of the boardroom when his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and answered. "Hello." A cool, familiar voice came through, the woman who had lost everything in that meeting. "Jihoon," she said, tone smooth as lacquer and twice as cold. "You've become bold. How dare you take this from me?" Jihoon let out a short, controlled laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Madam," he replied evenly, "you wear a name and a face that aren't yours. This company and that life never truly belonged to you." He held the line, waiting for the reaction he expected. She exhaled slowly, contempt threaded through the sound. "So you found someone who knows the past," she said dismissively. "They always hide until it's convenient. They are all cowards. You wouldn't understand loyalty if it bit you." Jihoon shot back, jaw tight. "You took and betrayed. Gratitude isn't part of your vocabulary." A dangerous smile crept into her voice. "We'll see how far your courage carries you once you're out on the street," she warned, then cut the line. Jihoon stared at his phone for a long second before slipping it into his pocket. Natalia watched him, eyes alert. "She's going to move," she said quietly. In the car, Mrs. Park's expression hardened into resolved cruelty. She turned to Choi with a command that left no room for debate. "Make sure they suffer when they step out of the building." Choi bowed and began to dial, fingers steady despite the order. The black car merged into traffic and slid away, carrying with it a plan born of wounded pride and cold calculation. Minutes later, Jihoon and Natalia sank into the back seat of his car. As the vehicle rolled smoothly out of the company driveway and merged onto the highway, Natalia's sharp eyes caught movement in the rearview mirror. "Jihoon, look," she said, tension rising. 3 black sedans mirrored their every turn, keeping a careful distance. Jihoon's jaw tightened. "They're on us," he muttered. Without another word, both reached for the guns hidden in the side compartments. Natalia's fingers closed around the grip with practiced precision. "We can't let them get closer," she said firmly. Jihoon nodded. "Stay calm. Miho, keep the car steady. Don't give them an opening." The driver, a veteran with nerves of steel, eased the car along, weaving slightly to avoid a predictable path. The first sedan drew close. Its window slid down and automatic weapons cracked, bullets splintering against the reinforced body of Jihoon's car. Natalia fired through the side window, each shot controlled and deliberate. "Left side, Jihoon," she shouted. Jihoon rolled his head to the right, taking careful aim. He fired at the approaching tail car's tires. Smoke rose as the sedan skidded, its driver struggling to regain control. Another car moved to flank them. Natalia leaned, firing precise shots at mirrors and tires, her focus unwavering. "One more on the left," she called. Jihoon mirrored her movements, bringing down the driver's side tire. The sedan swerved violently, nearly clipping the guardrail before righting itself. The final car attempted a daring maneuver to block their path. Jihoon's eyes narrowed. "Hold on." He leaned over Natalia, both of their guns firing simultaneously. A hail of bullets tore through the sedan's front fender, forcing it to swerve uncontrollably before it tumbled onto the shoulder. Breathing hard, Natalia lowered her gun and glanced at Jihoon. "This was fun." Jihoon allowed a small, grim smile. "It was." The car surged forward, leaving the wrecked sedans in the highway. When Jihoon's car rolled up to Lee's mansion in the bright afternoon, the gates opened smoothly to reveal Lee and Marie waiting. Sunlight bounced off the polished marble, casting a cinematic glow over the scene. As soon as Lee caught sight of Natalia, his eyes sharpened. Without hesitation, he strode toward her, steps quick and confident, scanning her from head to toe as if reading her in a single glance. Natalia smirked, catching his intensity, while Jihoon and Marie exchanged amused glances. "Looks like someone's checking you out," Marie teased lightly. Jihoon chuckled. "I was with her the entire time. Nothing would have happened to her, trust me. And we handled Minji's men well," he said, his tone a mixture of pride and relief. Lee finally stopped and offered a small, approving nod. "You handled yourself well out there," he said, voice calm but firm. Natalia raised an eyebrow, a hint of teasing in her eyes. "I am great," she said, her smile softening the tension in the air. Jihoon's expression then turned serious as he addressed the group. "We need to stay alert. Han Minji has been pushed into a corner. Desperate dogs bite hardest. She won't play fair anymore," he warned. "We can expect her next move any time," Lee added, his voice steady. Natalia leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. "Then we have to be ready for anything," she said, her tone resolute. With that, Jihoon and Marie bid their goodbyes and departed the mansion, their steps confident and purposeful. After Jihoon and Marie left, Lee turned to Natalia, his expression softening. "You must be hungry," he said, voice warm yet casual. Natalia let out a small laugh. "Starving," she admitted. "We didn't exactly have time for lunch while being shot at." Lee smirked, nodding toward the mansion. "Then come with me," he said, motioning for her to follow. Natalia tilted her head curiously, but trailed after him. When they stepped into the kitchen, she paused, blinking. "Wait," she said, eyeing him suspiciously. "Don't tell me you're actually going to cook?" Lee glanced over his shoulder, amusement sparking in his eyes. "What? You think I can't?" "Please," Natalia teased, leaning against the counter. "Men like you usually just know how to load guns and issue threats, not handle frying pans." He chuckled, rolling up his sleeves. "You'd be surprised, Miss Beautiful. When I was in Italy, I learned to cook under a famous chef. He taught me patience, and said a man who can cook can also control chaos." Natalia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So, what's on the menu, Chef Lee?" Lee grinned, opening the refrigerator. "Jollof rice and chicken," he declared confidently. Natalia blinked, then laughed. "You, cooking jollof? I have to see this." He only smiled and began gathering ingredients, tomatoes, onions, peppers, and spices. The aroma of simmering sauce soon filled the kitchen. Natalia watched him move effortlessly, focused yet relaxed, her curiosity turning into admiration. An hour later, Lee placed a steaming plate of jollof rice and grilled chicken in front of her. "Try it," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. Natalia took a bite, eyes widening instantly. "Oh my God," she said between mouthfuls, grinning. "Mr. Mafia Chef, you did an excellent job." Lee leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her reaction. "So," he said with a playful glint in his eyes, "what's my reward, Miss Beautiful?" She looked up, a mischievous smile tugging at her lips. Without a word, she stepped closer, hands brushing his shirt collar. "This," she whispered before pulling him into a deep, lingering kiss. Lee responded instantly, one hand at her waist, the other tangled in her hair. For a long moment, the world outside ceased to exist, just the two of them, the faint scent of jollof in the air, and the quiet sync of their hearts. When they finally parted, Natalia smiled softly, cheeks flushed. "Thank you," she murmured, "for the food and the moment." Lee returned her smile, brushing his thumb gently across her cheek. "Anytime," he said quietly. A week later, under the bright Seoul morning sky, a private jet touched down smoothly on the runway of Incheon International Airport. The hum of the engines gradually faded as the aircraft came to a stop. Moments later, the cabin door hissed open, and one by one, 50 men in dark suits and sunglasses descended the stairs. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, their faces unreadable. At the foot of the stairs stood Assistant Choi. His expression was stern, phone in hand as he updated Han Minji on their arrival. As the last man stepped off the jet, Choi gave a small bow. "Welcome to South Korea," he said smoothly. "Madam Han has been expecting you." The man at the front, tall with sharp features and a faint scar slicing across his jawline, regarded Choi with a cold stare. "We came sooner than planned," he said. "I assume preparations are complete." Choi nodded briskly. "Everything is in place. We've arranged accommodations. Madam will meet tonight. She'll explain the mission herself." The scarred man exchanged a glance with one of his subordinates, then turned back to Choi. She must be desperate, he muttered. When the Ghost Syndicate moves ahead of schedule, it's never for trivial matters. Choi's lips curved slightly. Desperation or strategy, both can be powerful. Either way, she wants results. Results, the man repeated dryly. We deliver nothing less. Choi gestured toward the waiting cars. Then let's not waste time. The convoy is ready. Minutes later, engines roared to life, and the black cars rolled out in tight formation, slicing through the morning light as the city of Seoul stretched out before them. At the same time, on the opposite side of the airport, another private jet glided to a smooth stop on the runway. The golden morning light shimmered off its polished surface as the door opened and the stairs descended. Vanessa stepped out first, her long black coat fluttering slightly in the breeze, followed closely by Sang-woo and 5 members of their elite task force unit. Vanessa stretched her arms, inhaling deeply as a bright grin spread across her face. Finally, Seoul, she said, her voice carrying both excitement and relief. I can already smell the food, the fashion, the chaos. Oh, I miss this place. Sang-woo chuckled. You're not here for vacation, remember? We're here on a mission. Vanessa gave him a teasing look. Oh, come on, hubby. Can't I be excited about saving the world and enjoying good kimchi at the same time? One of their teammates, a tall man named Carter, laughed softly as he carried their equipment. I'd bet my paycheck you'll find a way to do both, ma'am. Vanessa shot him a playful wink. You know me too well. Sang-woo shook his head with a small smile, then turned serious as they reached the tarmac where 2 black vans waited. Focus, everyone, he said firmly. Headquarters confirmed the Ghost Syndicate's advance team landed less than 25 minutes ago. We move fast from here. The team members exchanged sharp, disciplined nods and loaded their gear into the vans. Minutes later, engines roared to life, and the 2 black vans pulled away from the runway, merging into the morning traffic, carrying the elite unit toward the heart of Seoul and the looming confrontation that awaited them.
Thank you so much for watching Seoul Vendetta. I truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your feedback keeps this story alive. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay tuned for the next episode.